We get inspiration for poetry from everywhere. Our love lives, of course, our families, lots of inspiration from the natural world, even observations of the most common objects. A poet from Franklin County gets his inspiration from the old iron mines in Lyon Mountain. That's today's story of the day.
Support for Story of the Day comes from Long Run Wealth, an SEC-registered investment advisor in Lake Placid, providing comprehensive wealth management, retirement, and financial planning solutions. LongRunWealth.com. And from SciTech Business Solutions, training and consulting services to help businesses grow. More information at citec.org.
Hey, I'm David Sommerstein. It's Wednesday, October 9th. First up, the Big Tupper ski area is going up for foreclosure auction next month. That's after years of uncertainty about the future of the ski area, which closed in 1999. Developers tried to turn it into a luxury home resort, but failed. Amy Feiereisel has details.
The Adirondack Club and Resort reimagined the Big Tupper ski area as a massive 6,000-acre resort. But legal battles with environmentalists and creditors dogged the project for years. The investors eventually ran out of momentum and money. As the Adirondack Daily Enterprise reports, the owners of the ski area stopped paying taxes on the property in 2013. Franklin County foreclosed on the property last year. In 2021, the town of Tupper Lake expressed interest in taking possession of the ski area and reopening it. But that plan was made impossible by a 2023 Supreme Court ruling, which ruled that governments could not take possession of foreclosed properties in exchange for taxes and penalties. Tupper Lake's town supervisor, Ricky DeTola, says officials are hopeful that whoever buys the ski center will reopen it as such. He said he's already heard from 2 potential developers. The Big Tupper ski area has a minimum bid of about $470,000, which is based on delinquent taxes, penalty interest, and statutory fees owed to Franklin County. It's being sold alongside 3 other nearby properties for a total of about 240 acres. The auction will be held on November 7th in Malone. Amy Feiereisel, North Country Public Radio.
A huge new expansion at Canton Potsdam Hospital will open to patients next week. Donna McGregor from Rochester Regional Health, which owns the hospital, spoke with WWNY-TV at Monday's ribbon cutting for the $80 million project.
Such an upgrade from what we have had in the past. This project doubles the size of the campus footprint and allows us to have private rooms and a caring environment for our community. The building is beautiful, but the technology and the clinical infrastructure is second to none.
The hospital expansion in Potsdam includes upgrading the emergency department, adding 15 surgical patient beds, and increasing the number of private patient rooms to 60. The ER opened to the public last month. A New York State Supreme Court justice has struck down the state's even-year election law. Democratic Governor Kathy Hochul signed the measure 2 years ago. It would have shifted local elections to coincide with national races, but the law was challenged by Oneida and other Republican-led counties. In his ruling Tuesday, Judge Gerard Neri said it superseded the state constitution's provision giving local governments the right to decide local matters. Jim Bourey has had a lot of jobs. He's a veteran, he sold used cars, he's a former plumbing wholesaler, and all that has helped his new profession, the, quote, Poet Laureate of Dickinson Center, which is in Franklin County, by the way. His latest poems are all about the legacy of the mining community of Lyon Mountain. He sat down with Mitch Tyke in a coffee shop in Malone to discuss exactly how he became a published poet in his 60s and how the North Country landscape continues to inspire his work.
It's really easy to imagine poets plying their trade in places like, maybe Paris or London or Brooklyn or even like Burlington, Vermont. Is there a poetry to northern New York and rural America that you don't think people appreciate?
I do. The North Country, it's loaded. And there are some recognized poets, but most of us up here, we don't get, even the academics don't get too much recognition. So, and I'm nowhere near academic, so.
Well, and I wonder if there's a certain inspiration for poetry that's maybe closer to the surface in a place like rural America.
Well, first of all, you have nature, of course, but you also have a lot of hard times up here. So that's an inspiring thing, too. So
yeah, and speaking of hard times, I gather one of the projects you're working on right now is about is a history project, a history poetry project about a particular community that's really kind of experienced hard times over the years.
I'm working on a thematic collection of poems. Has to do with the Lyon Mountain, Standish area. It's hopefully I'm trying to capture the voices of a lot of the people that went through the rise and the fall, which was actually fell back in the 60s. It was 1967 when it went down.
What's your hope for what comes out of that?
A little bit of history, but I want to show the experience of first of all, the early miners it was a really, really hard place to live. It was very, very difficult. But they kind of tamed it was like a Wild West. So I want to tell that story. But then there was some great prosperity for several years. World War II, the mining community was really, really prosperous. And it was a good place to work if you could get through the conditions of being underground and so forth. Then there was a decline, and I've been talking to quite a few people who lived through that part of it, and there was a fear, there was an underlying fear of what's coming next, So I want to try and tell that story. I think it's an important story of a rise and fall of a small community. It's I think it needs to be heard. Yeah.
I don't know if there's a typical way that someone becomes a poet, but you've sort of fallen into this life later in your chronology.
Yeah, quite a bit. I've always written, but I never tried to get anything published, and then life kind of got in the way. Had to earn a living. And I came out of the Air Force in 1968. I went to work for a bank. I was a banker, stuck with that for a while, and I was in industrial sales. I traveled, actually this was part of my territory at one time up here in the North Country. Then I was, I was part owner of a music store for a while. I became interested in car sales. I was a car salesman for a while. But then I went into the plumbing and heating and air conditioning wholesale business, and that's where I ended up for my last 20 years or so.
Is there poetry in wholesale plumbing?
Sure.
Is any of it in any of these chapbooks?
Yes, actually, yes. There's I have 2 poems about pipe that I can think of off the top of my head. And yeah, there all these things enter into a poet's life. Everything that an honest poet will write about what he knows, of course, and that's what we're doing every day.
Jim Bourey is the author of several books of poetry, including Out There and Back Again. His latest project explores the history of the mining community of Lyon Mountain. He spoke with Mitch Teich. Let's listen to one of Bourey's poems called A Career.
Black iron pipe, stacked by diameter, the smallest tight around my little finger. I could poke my head into the largest, but all the sizes were long, over 20 heavy feet each. My first job was to move the stacks. My second was to cut the pipe into equally measured pieces and machine threads on every end. We called those finished pieces nipples. I don't know why. They offered no sustenance or pleasure. In time, I no longer had to do hot, dirty work. It became my task to buy and sell the steel and copper and plastic lengths. I sold it by the truckload. Fancy that. Miles and miles of pipe carrying liquids, gases, and wastes of all kinds. And though it all got me somewhere, in the end, I had barely moved.
That was Jim Bourey with the poem A Career. He spoke with Mitch Teich for the Northwords podcast from NCPR. Music today by I Am Snow Angel of Lake Placid and Paul Meyer of Colton. I'm David Summerstein, North Country Public Radio.